Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So today we're taking a look at some decks that should be good for the location Lamentis-1. This is the first location coming as part of the Silver Surfer season, and it's a pretty interesting one. So let's take a look at some decks we have here. Starting off with pool number 1. Pretty simple on reveal deck here, bunch of good stuff. The interesting thing about this location is that it might actually make Domino a bit better of a card. It depends how the interaction works with this, but you always draw this card on turn 2 and not before. So if Lamentis gets revealed on turn 1 and you draw those 3 cards and destroy your deck, you know you won't be getting Domino, essentially. Also, I think on turn 2, since the location reveals first, I think you will not draw her from it, but it's possible you might draw her from it on turn 2. We'll have to wait and see on that interaction, but at the very least, it's a benefit if it is revealed on turn 1, and just gives your deck a bit more consistency. Other than that, just some general good stuff here with the on reveal. We have Star-Lord, Scarlet Witch to change the location, Wolfsbane and Ironheart, and then obviously the big top end with White Tiger, Gamora, and Odin. Then we also have Chavez for a bit more deck consistency, and some more 1-drops to help fill out our curve a bit. But pretty simple stuff here, but I do think that the addition of Domino might be pretty good depending on how she interacts with the hot location. One pool deck that I think will be pretty good for this is Strong Guy Zoo. This is actually, I think, even a viable option if you are just entering pool 3 and don't have a lot of those cards yet. I think this is a very powerful deck. I played it a few weeks back, and it actually stood up pretty well against a lot of the pool 3 decks. They're usually a bit more combo-centric and have a bit more synergy than some of the pool 2 ones. But Strong Guy is really good. This is a 1-drop heavy deck. We have more than half of our deck full of 1-drops here. All pretty good cards. We are using armor because Killmonger does start to become a thing in pool 2, so we do have to be careful about that. If you're feeling a little more adventurous, you could put in another 1-drop like Korg, but I like having the added protection. But overall, having a deck that has mostly 1-drops and cheap cost cards will make it easier to take advantage of drawing off of the location, and it'll make it easier to dump out all our cards so that we can have a big, powerful, strong guy. We have some upgrades to the on-reveal deck. One neat thing about this location is we're going to have a lot of cards in hand, so it's actually very beneficial for us to play out our cards in the early turn, so we don't have too many cards, so we actually do get to draw all those cards. So we have some upgrades in Iceman here as a 1-drop, and then Scorpion here as a 2-drop, both very good in the on-reveal shell. You could consider Domino again, depending on how that interaction works, but I really like Scorpion in this list. Then a lot of the stuff very similar. The only big difference here, other than those cards, is Storm. Storm is just a really great card, especially when paired with Jessica Jones as follow-up. Definitely hard to beat that combo in a uncontested lane when you're in pool 2. But let's take a look at some of the pool 3 decks we have here. For our first pool 3 deck here, we have a Death Wave deck. Now I think this one definitely works well under the conditions of the location. Also, I'm not sure if this actually impacts death or not, but Yondu destroying the top card of their deck, maybe destroying their cards with the location will reduce death. That could be a really cool interaction. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But other than that, it's just a really solid deck, and it can take advantage of the location because we have so many cheap things that we can play down. So we're going to reduce the amount of cards in our hand so we get more benefit from the draw. We also have Debris as a bit of disruption, and I do think that Galactus might be a little more popular during this one, so having something to potentially disrupt their Galactus turn, definitely a big plus. Same kind of thing with Arrow here, can also be good at doing that and just shutting down the game. Arrow's also really good at doing that here, especially when combined with Wave and Death. So overall, a very solid deck and one that I think can leverage this location well. Our next pool 3 deck here is going to be a Sarah deck that's utilizing Silver Surfer to buff up a bunch of other 3-cost cards here. So we're going to have Sunspot because we're going to be floating energy from turn to turn due to the amount of 3s in our deck. Domino for the reasons we stated before about the drawing. And then we have a bunch of 3s here. Ironheart helps us buff up our other stuff. Silver Surfer, same thing, but a bit more powerful. Wolfsbane, pretty good power for cost in a pretty full location. Brood gives us a ton of 3s, which is really, really nice for Surfer. Fantastic helps us fight for multiple lanes, so the opponent doesn't know what you're really going for always. Debris is good disruption. Maximus, very, very powerful card for the cost if your opponent does not have a deck to draw cards from, so that's really nice. Wong can help us double up Surfer, as well as some of our other on-reveal effects. Sarah lets us play 3 drops for the final turn to get a lot of value out of Surfer. And Chavez gives us that deck consistency, and she will never be drawn by the location when it goes off. So, pretty sweet deck here. I think this is going to be a pretty strong shell for Silver Surfer. You could also consider Bast in this deck if you happen to get them, but that is obviously a pool 5 card, so less people are going to have access to that. But I think even without it, Sunspot does a pretty good job, and the deck should be pretty solid. Next up here, we have an Electro deck. The idea behind this is we just play a bunch of big, impactful stuff to go along with Electro, so once the decks are gone, we can make the most use out of all the things we do have in our hand. We do have a Sunspot for getting some value out of our floating energy, Domino and Chavez for the consistency factor, and then Wave as another source of cheating things out into play or locking the opponent into only playing 1 card. Other than that, we have a Wong package, so some stuff to get value off of that, like White Tiger, Black Panther. We also have the Zola combo in here to go with Panther, and occasionally Wong. Leader is nice because it can almost guarantee a win sometimes if we're ahead. Doom lets us fight for multiple lanes on the board all at once, and then Odin pairs very nicely with a bunch of the other on-reveal cards that we have in this deck. Next deck we're going to look at here is one that utilizes She-Hulk, and it is a pretty sweet one. The other cool thing about it is this is actually a relatively budget, quote-unquote, deck, because She-Hulk is really the main card other than a bunch of other Pool 2s here. We do have one other Pool 3 card in the deck, and that is Psylocke. Psylocke enables a pretty powerful combo here with She-Hulk, where we can play a 2-drop or 2 1-drops in Psylocke on turn 4. We can then pass turn 5 with 6 energy. Then on the final turn, we will be able to play She-Hulk for free and the Infinite. So that's kind of the reasoning there. Another card you could consider in here is Quinjet, as Quinjet goes pretty well with Moon Girl and the copies. But overall, general game plan here, we're really trying to make copies of our She-Hulk, and we're trying to close out the game with big things like Infinite. I think this will work pretty well with the location because we have a bunch of cheap 1-drops that also add some disruption to the deck, which is very nice. Armor to protect them, Domino and Chavez for the consistency factor, Cosmo is a bit more tech, and then Moon Girl for doubling up on stuff, and She-Hulk and Infinite to help close out the game. I think this one definitely a pretty solid list, and you really only need She-Hulk, so if you happen to get that card, this is a good one to try her out in. And then the last deck we have here is making use of Bast in a Sarah shell to get down a ton of cards and just kind of swarm out the opponent. This also plays into the location well since we have so much stuff to dump here. I mean, half of our deck, more than half of our deck costs 2 or less. So we have Wasp, Ant-Man, Bast to buff up all of our cheap stuff. There's actually basically only 1 card in the whole deck that doesn't like getting hit by Bast, and that's Sarah, and it's not a big deal. Every other card, it is pretty much an advantage. Even Mysterio, it's an advantage, because even though it makes the main Mysterio 3, it makes our copies also 3. So it's actually adding 9 power from this card, which is pretty crazy. Mojo, good because we're filling the board. Mystique to potentially copy our Iron Man or Blue Marvel. Bishop because we're swarming a bunch of stuff out. Iron Man can definitely take people by surprise, especially on the Sarah turn. Blue Marvel because we have a lot of stuff to play. And then Sarah just so we can cheat out some of our bigger stuff to kind of close out the game. So I think this is a pretty solid way to go if you want to try out using Bast. But that is going to wrap it up for this video. Definitely let me know in the comments below what decks you are looking forward to playing during this location. And if you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.